everybody. Welcome to Ask an Expert. Special edition this week. We have a workshop, which we've done so many Ask an Expert episodes and never a workshop. And this one is after high demand. We're doing a conditioning workshop with Jon Holling. Jon, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I know people are very excited.
Yep. Thanks for having me again. And I'm excited to do this. It was pretty fun actually going through and filling it all out and giving some thought to this.
Yeah, we definitely have Jon to thank for really preparing and making sure that we can make the most out of this hour. To set the table a bit, if you haven't attended Ask an Expert before, Ask an Expert is a weekly live question and answer that we do on a specific topic with an expert on that topic. So we invite people to join and they can chime in and ask questions as we go, or of course, listen after the fact. And today will just be a little bit different because Jon will present some conditioning templates. Today we're focusing on starter level through novice level. So starter, beginner, novice, novice. And if there are requests, we'll certainly do training and above as well. But figured that this would be kind of a good place to start. So Jon will go through those templates, and then there's all sorts of things we can dive into because, of course, conditioning is not one size fits all. There's so much variability that can come into play. I'm sitting in Denver. Jon is sitting in Florida. There's weather and topography to consider there. And of course, we all have different horses and different schedules. So take a deep breath. We'll get into all of it. We'll answer everyone's questions. If you are here live, please practice using the chat feature. Say hello. Tell us who you are. I can't see your names, so tell us who you are, where you're tuning in from, and please feel encouraged to participate during this because that will just make it more valuable for everyone. So ask your questions as you have them. I will circle back to them once we get to that point. So with that, Jon, I'll let you kind of do an introduction and talk about how you think about conditioning schedules, and then we can dive into, maybe we'll start with the introduction, like the starter level first, and go through that and take it from there.
Perfect. All right, great. Thank you. So when Jessa and Kinsey asked me to do this, just so everybody sort of knows the background of where I came into this from, I sort of worked my way down because I'll be honest, when you talk about an intro, beginner, novice, and novice horse being ready to go to an event, that's actually not something I always think a lot about because a lot of times those horses are schooling a lot, they're cross-countrying a lot, they're just in the program. They sort of go out and do some trot sets. But I haven't always been as thoughtful about it as I should. So actually it was a great exercise for me to sort of take what does a training level horse do? Okay, so that's what my training level horse does. So now how would I scale that down to a novice and then a beginner novice and then an intro horse? So that's kind of how I came to these different plans. That said, like Jessa just said in the intro, these are just general guides, right? And I did this on a 7-day week, working your horse 6 days a week. I think one thing that's super important before we get into this is to realize that I know 6 days a week of riding may not be feasible. So as we go into this, if you have questions about that, if you say to me like, look, I have a job and a family and I can get out to ride 5 days a week, or I can get out to ride 4 days a week, there might be a way we can work that. If you get less than 4, then to me, that gets a little bit difficult, certainly at the novice level. I think the other thing to realize is that while we're talking about horse fitness, part of this also going through this process of doing these trot sets and these canter sets and these flat work sessions and these jump sessions and cross-country schooling, part of this also is about rider fitness. So to me, when we go through like into our intro or starter level, you're going to have canter sets. And there would be an argument for sure to say really for intro or starter level, I keep calling it intro, I think it's actually starter. For starter level, do we really need to be doing canter sets? Well, for a thoroughbred who comes off the racetrack, maybe not. For a big, heavy, cold-blooded horse, possibly you do. But I think the reality is if you want to go to a starter level event, you as a rider should be able to go out and do a canter set. And so part of this also is going to be about us as riders, making sure that we're strong enough, fit enough, and balanced enough to be able to go canter around. So that's kind of where this all comes from. There are obviously going to be hiccups along the way when you're schooling your horses. And when you're going through, this 6-week schedule this is a schedule. Basically, the way I looked at this was, and Jessa and I had talked about this, was we're not talking about bringing a horse from a vacation that has been doing nothing. We're talking about a horse that maybe you've been up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I grew up, and you've been riding through the winter months and spring is approaching, and you want to start eventing, and you've been riding maybe 3 days a week, 4 days a week because it's cold, and you're getting out there, even if you're riding 5 or 6 days a week, but maybe you're doing 20-minute rides because your feet freeze any longer than that. So you're sort of in that, what I'd call like winter fitness. Your horse has its winter bod, but the horses are in work before they get to this. We're not talking about a horse coming from a field or a horse coming from an injury.
It's not the couch to 5K program.
Correct. That would be a longer program than 6 weeks.
Yeah. You've been working a bit, and then you can dive into these 6-week programs that Jon has designed. And also, Jon is in Ocala, but he hails from Wisconsin. So all of you who are in the Midwest, or really anywhere that has cold weather and where your situation really changes as the season changes, Jon can at least relate. So yeah. I think that especially makes him the perfect person for the job. I also want to say hi. We have so many wonderful people here. I'll do a few shout outs and then we can jump into the intro template. Melissa's here from Ocala. She has an appendix horse that she's going to be getting fit. Mickey McDaniel, hi Mickey, is here from Kentucky. Kirsten from New Hampshire. Anna from Minnesota, who has a fabulous fat fjord, she said, who we all know is Olaf. And an upper level rider from Ocala. Stephanie from Raleigh, North Carolina. Pam from Ocala. So people are, Sam from Lexington. Hi, Sam. People are coming in from all over. And it looks like all types of horses too. So we will definitely be able to cover a variety. Someone here from Tennessee and Wisconsin. So lots of people here.
I just want to interrupt briefly, Jessa, because I'm laughing. Somebody said I'm talking about rider fitness as they're working on fitness steak in their mouth.
I hadn't read that one yet. That sounds like you're hitting your protein goals. So yes, that's good. And multitasking, which is good as well. So with that, we'll jump into this first template. Jon will go through it. As you have questions, like I said, put them in chat and we will circle back to them. But here is our first 6-week program. If you're in the Facebook group right now, I made a post specifically with this template, not with everything filled in, because as we talk through, you will adjust according to your horse. But here's kind of a standard starting point.
All right. So like I said, this is on a 7-day week because that's what we all do. I gave Monday as a generic day off. It doesn't have to be Monday. It can be any day of the week that you want.
Jon's frozen. Is Jon frozen for you guys? Right when we get into it. If you're in the chat, tell me if Jon is frozen for you. He is. Well, at least we got the goods. We have the template here.
Am I back?
There he is. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was about to log out and log back in. Okay. So I'm back.
So all we heard so far is any day of the week can be your off day.
Okay. I said a lot of really good stuff. It was like my best stuff.
Perfect. You practiced.
Okay.
Now's the real deal.
All right. So it can be any day you want. So basically we've got one trot day and one sort of fitness canter day, cardio day. So if I give my horse a day off, the first thing that I do when I get back, put them back to work the next day, is I take them out for a nice long hack. As you guys who are members of Ride IQ know, I talk a lot in my lessons, as do a lot of us, about walking your horses and doing that before your rides and after your rides. And so I take my horses out on a nice long walk hack. I will say I have had a couple horses in my program that do not hack. They just get themselves all worked up and upset. And so if that's the case for your horse, you can make that first day into a little bit of a light flat school. Or if you have a horse that just generally struggles a little bit with the dressage and you want to do like, instead of an hour walk, maybe you do a 20-minute walk, you do a 10 or 15-minute sort of stretchy work, and then you do finish out that hour and walk. Sometimes that's a really great way to deal with that. Then we're going to have a flat day on your second day back to work. And then you're going to have your 5-minute trot day in there to start your week out. I like to have a little jump. That jump can be anything you want. It can be gymnastics. It can be coursework. You have to sort of decide what you're going to do. And, we're probably not going to get a lot in this portion of it about what those dressage or jump schools should be, because it kind of depends on your horse and how intense they need to be. Then you're going to do your flat day again, and then the Sunday is your gallop day. So that's sort of your first week, and I'm not going to go through that for all six weeks here because obviously that gets a little bit redundant. That's, as you look at this is a very, for lack of a better word, a very generic outline, because it does kind of depend on what are you riding in. Are you riding in a ring, right? I'd love it if you weren't stuck in a ring all the time and you could do those trot sets and those canter sets outside. But you have to deal with what you got. This is set up in a way with time so that if you're stuck in a ring, you could make it work. You pop in your headphones, you listen to your Sinead Halpin Ride IQ podcast, or possibly the John and Rick show, and you do your trot sets or your canter sets. You listen to that and sort of plod through the time so that you can stay on task. But I think one thing that to me is super important is we're talking about getting horses ready to event. So if you have the ability to do your fitness work outside in a field, if you have hills, it's even better. I think that's a really important piece, because one of the things that I see, especially at the starter level, is a lot of times the people who are out there, they're newer, greener to the sport, and they are a little bit uncomfortable being loose in a field. So practice that, right? So that's really, when you look at this, especially for any of you who are sitting on any sort of a blood type horse, a thoroughbred horse, the reality is even in our last week there, where you have a 10-minute trot and you have on your gallop day a 5-minute trot and 2.5-minute canters, that's not gonna like really task a thoroughbred horse necessarily, but it's going to get you as a rider comfortable being balanced, being up in your galloping position. And when you're in that canter set, I want you guys to be thinking about being able to lengthen your stride, especially going up hills, being able to collect your stride coming down hills, having some rideability. And really important here, getting out of the saddle so that you're in your galloping position for your gallop sets. And I say gallop, that's generic. To be fair, if you guys gallop around a starter course, you're going to have about 200 time penalties for speeding. So it's really a slow canter. And to be honest, probably some trotting out there around the course as well. But I want you to be able to get up and canter in the field loose, right? That's the whole point. You'll also notice that I did say for those canter days, it could be a cross-country school. So I think the reality is if you have a good cross-country school, really probably even up through the training level, those cross-country schools can count as a gallop, depending on how intense they are. And if you get into this program, you'll start to get a feel for like, how tired does my horse get, right? If you do that for the first 3 weeks and you do up to that 2-minute canter, and then in week 4, you decide, okay, now I'm going to do a cross-country school. When you get done with that cross-country school, you're going to look down at your horse, and my guess is you're going to say, wow, my horse is breathing harder than it does when I do my canter set, in which case you're good. You've done your canter set. If you get done and you think, I only jumped maybe a dozen jumps and I don't think this horse has done as much work as it does during my canter set, then you might do one short canter set to make up for that. So you do have to feel your way through this. And I think that's a really important piece. So at that point, you ask your coach, or you get on the Ride IQ Facebook group and you ask, ugh, am I back? I'm sorry,
Okay, you're
guys.
back. You're back.
I don't know what's wrong.
I took you're not offline. I just saw a chat that said you might be offline. I just turned my camera off to make sure that my internet is strong.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. That's been terrible. I'm just going to make sure my kid's not on. Give me 1 sec.
Poor Caden. No
He's probably
problem.
playing Madden.
This is a great pause. Personally, I'm writing down questions as we go. So if you're having questions come up, let us know what they are. Jon, you were just saying like it's important to observe your horse and see how they're doing. Yeah. Anything else on that thought before I do have one question before we move on?
No, I just think ask questions of knowledgeable people around you, whether you have them immediately accessible to you or it's on the Facebook group for Ride IQ. Just ask the questions as you go through this stuff.
Great. The only question that I have based on this format is, so when you're doing like 2-minute canter sets, for example, which comes in on week 3 of this program, how much rest are you giving your horse between each of those canter sets?
Okay. Super question. Sorry, it blinked on me again. Okay, am I still here? Okay. So let's just go through the week 6 of our, why did I put a 5-minute trot? First of all, I'll say in week 6 there, that's a mistake.
No, that was my bad. 10-minute trot.
It should be a 10-minute trot. So what you would do is you get on your horse. I'm just going to walk you through the whole day. And this is kind of the way I do all of them. I would get on my horse and I would go for a 20-minute walk. Then I would do my 10-minute trot. Then I would walk for 3 minutes. Then I would canter for 2.5 minutes. Then I would walk for 3 minutes. Then I would canter for 2.5 minutes. And then I would walk my horse out for 20 minutes. The one thing I would add that is really good information so that you can have an idea, is my thoroughbred fit, is my Lusitano fit, right? Is you can check the respirations, and it's kind of a generic way to do it, but I was taught this years and years and years ago. And if you have access to a heart rate monitor, that's a great tool, but they can be a little bit complicated to put on and they're not cheap. So what you do is you make sure you wear your handy dandy wristwatch, right? A Timex watch is really great because it has the seconds that run on it. And you look at your horse's nostrils, you stand still and halt. Hopefully your horse will stand. You can do it if they won't, but it's easier if they will. Stand still and halt. You look at your horse's nostrils or your horse's flank, and you count their breaths for 15 seconds. So you count their breaths and you might get, let's say, 20 breaths in 15 seconds. You take that number, you multiply it by 4. I'm terrible at math, but I'm pretty sure that works out to 80. And you're at 80 breaths per minute. 80 breaths per minute is right on sort of the generic place where most horses go into their anaerobic threshold. So if, let's say, you had 25 breaths per minute, you'd be at 100. So you would count that. When you finish your first gallop, while you're having your little 3-minute break, you would count that. And then you would walk around and then you'd say, okay, I'm supposed to wait 3 minutes according to Jon, but I'm going to take my respirations again. You want that number to go down below 20 before you start again. If it won't drop below 20, then you probably need to shorten up your canter sets or give your horse an extra minute to wait and see if those breaths come down again. If you get to 5 minutes and your horse is still breathing really hard, you call it a day. You're done for today, and you come back and you shorten up that canter the next time, and maybe instead of doing the 2.5, you do 2, and see where you're at. Some horses are panters, and so that can be a little bit tricky. If you start questioning, is my horse panting, then that's where you need to probably get a heart rate monitor and see how many beats per minute your horse gets. And then you're going to ask me, what is that? And I don't remember.
Well, that's really helpful. To be able to check in with yourself that you're giving the right amount of rest and that your horse is kind of where it should be. To repeat back to you what you said in terms of how you approach one of these canter days, conditioning days, gallop days, whatever you want to call what we have in the Sunday column here.
Yeah.
You start every ride with correct me if I'm wrong. You start every ride with the 20-minute walk.
Yes.
And then you would go into your 10-minute trot set. And then between these sets, the kind of standard would be a 3-minute walk break. So 10-minute trot, then 3-minute walk. Then you get into your 2.5-minute canter, then 3-minute walk.
Yep.
Okay. Just as you were saying that out loud, I wanted to make sure it was kind of those 3-minute walk breaks.
Yeah, it's a 3-minute walk break is what I generically do. I I suppose because it's a 2.5 minute canter, it could be less, but I think at the end of the day, 3 minutes is kind of the standard I've always used, and it's worked well. It can be a little bit tough in the summertime, especially here in Florida. It gets really hot, so you got to start early because walking around in a field with a hot horse, trying to let them cool out in 3 minutes can sometimes just not happen. But that's a good generic number. And then I think, again, just checking your respirations is a good idea.
Okay, great. And the other question that we have that I think fits in now is on those trot days. So in the Thursday column on the template that we're looking at, what are you doing outside of that? Like, for example, 5-minute trot, just your 20-minute walk, then 5-minute trot, then call it a day.
That's what I would do on my sort of trot day. So in reality, and I know like this is where this gets a little tricky at this level, is a 5-minute trot really is not going to be as intense as a dressage day. So one of the challenges here was to give you guys something that gave you a template to give you some discipline, so that as you're going along through your season and you're thinking about, well, maybe I want to go to the next level or the next level, that you're doing a very regimented, scheduled plan, if that makes sense. So I'll say this: if you're on a horse that struggles with its fitness, on that 5-minute trot day, you may say like, okay, I did my 5-minute trot. That's great. But now I want to go do a little bit of flat work. But part of this as well is we're talking about a 6-day schedule. For a lot of these horses, that's going to probably be as much work as they've ever done in their entire lives, as far as like number of days that they work, like proper work. So that 5-minute trot day could be go out on a hack trail ride with your friends. And while you're out there, make sure you do 5 minutes straight of trotting. It's about the discipline of it. And it's also about honestly getting your horse out of the ring and getting comfortable riding outside and going around and doing stuff. So yes, so the way this is set right now, kind of generically, is if I had a 5-minute trot day, I'd go out, I'd hack my horse again. I'd be on him for an hour, but in that hour, I would do that trot set in there. But I will say that to your point, Jessa, or to answer your question, that isn't like an excessive amount of work. It's really about getting you guys understanding, like, okay, if I have my advanced horse, that 5-minute trot is actually a 35 to 40-minute trot. And then it starts getting pretty serious. So I'm trying to give you guys productive work that also gives you a little bit of insight into what it takes to get these horses to go up the levels and be strong enough and fit enough.
Yes, totally. That's what we've heard from members before too, because we've had conditioning and fitness talks before. And, you know, while some of the feedback is like, you don't necessarily need a regimented conditioning program for the starter level, members have said, like, I really want to get into the discipline and the habit and the understanding of following a program and kind of what that entails. So I think that's great. I think that people will really appreciate having this approach, even for lower levels. Shall I switch to the beginner novice template? I think we'll be able to move through.
These will be a little bit quicker because we've got a lot of the base plan now. You guys understand. So basically, once we get it up here, what you're going to see is we go up to the beginner novice level. It's the same schedule, right? It's just the times move up a little bit. So we start at 8-minute trots. We finish down there at 12-minute trots. Our canters go up a little bit. So you do your 8-minute trot for your warm up in week 1, and then you do your 2-minute canters all the way down until you're at the end, and you do your 12-minute trot and your 3-minute canters. You'll see I put in here, you can do again or cross-country schools. I didn't put that in the first week because I felt like if we're talking about coming from a horse who's kind of been in that winter condition, off-season condition, but in work, that you probably want to do a canter set before you go out and start cross-country schooling. So that would be the one thing I'd say there about adding the schools in. You certainly do not necessarily have to cross-country school every week. I think that's just an option that's there. I will also say that if you have one who's struggling with the cross-country, you could have 2 cross-country schools a week, right? Like, they don't have to be intense. So keep that in mind. And, you know, again, if I have one that it's always a toss up if we're talking now. And again, I'm getting a little bit off track here because we're talking about fitness, but I think with that does also come sort of mental fitness for your horse as well. So like if I have one who struggles with the dressage and staying soft in its body, and I feel like after a day off, they, walk. And then on that Wednesday, when I do my dressage, it's like just terrible. And I really need 3 days of dressage. I will sometimes, again, like we said in the last starter group, I will make that hack day become a little bit more of a flat day. So with that said, if I do that, that first day is going to be more stretching, soft, relaxed, round and down work, not so much up and collection work. And then again, just trying to give you guys the discipline of your trot sets there. They get a little bit more intense at this level. And again, I think the big thing is if you're talking about now at beginner novice, and I know it's not like, gosh, these are huge, gigantic fences, but there's enough to ride at there, especially on a green horse. You've got to be comfortable getting up in your galloping position and cantering and being able to stay, like you should be able to stand in your stirrups for 2-minute canters. Honestly, you should be able to do that easily. If you're ready to go to your beginner novice, you should be able to do at the end your 2-3-minute canters. That's only 6 minutes of cantering. And I'm pretty sure at a beginner novice, you're going to have, probably minimum, a 4-minute course. So we need to be able to get up into that 2-point. Your horse needs to also understand how to be balanced in that galloping position. So just like I'm kind of harping on the rider about being strong enough, your horse needs to know, because if it's a racehorse, racehorses know to drop their wither and run as fast as they can when they go to gallop. So we've got to teach them here that, hey, we can be up out of the saddle and we can canter in that galloping position. We don't have to lower our body and sprint out of the start box. And at the same point, if you're on sort of a more cold-blooded horse or a warm blood, we want to get them to understand how to carry their shoulder up and be soft and not sort of pulling and plowing down on you. So a lot of times people will say to me like, oh gosh, my horse gets strong when I go out cross country. I need more bridle. And I'll say to them, okay, well, have you addressed it at home in your gallop? And they'll say to me, well, no, like I don't really do gallops. Or yeah, he gets a little bit strong at home, but I just sit on him and make him, do the canter sets with me in the saddle like I'm doing dressage. You have to, if you have a horse that struggles galloping on cross country, you have to practice that just like you'd practice any other skill that you have at the event. So those gallop sets are for fitness for you, fitness for your horse, but also about getting some rideability there. So that is that one. We could probably go on to the novice schedule then if you want.
Sounds great. Stand by. Here we come.
I'm just thrilled I again.
All right.
Okay. So we're into novice. So for the novice, again, it's the same basic template for everybody. You see the trots go up, right? So at the end, you're up to a 15-minute trot for your novice horses. Now, this is where I will say it starts to get a little bit more real. So this is a plan that my novice horses would do. Not all of my novice horses would be doing gallop sets yet because I'm probably cross-country schooling them more because they're usually quite feral and need the cross-country work. But they absolutely do these trot sets. The 15-minute trot is a great place to be starting or to be at when you're ready to start competing those horses. And again, you'll see by the end there, you're now talking 3-minute canters, and that is sort of the standard place where I would be starting to think about, okay, now I'm really doing this for real, right? Is 3 canter sets. So you do your walk, you do your trot, you do your 3-minute break, and then you do your 3-minute canter, your 3-minute break, 3-minute canter, 3-minute break, 3-minute canter, and then you walk your horse out. So doing sets of 3 is when you really start talking about doing your, your cardio work, when you start doing your, your interval training. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. It was a big word.
Nailed it.
That's you're really talking about interval training now. So what you should be able to sort of start putting together here as we looked at intro, which admittedly was pretty straightforward stuff. Now we're getting into novice, is you can hopefully see how the discipline of that intro plan moves forward. And now at novice, it's starting to look a little bit more real. So I think doing it at that first level with the young horses or the green riders, again, teaches the horses and teaches the riders the discipline of, look, this is our schedule. This is what we do today. We're going to go do that trot set. We're going to go do this canter set today. But within all of this, I do think it's important to know, especially at this level, if you miss a day, if you miss a week, it's not the end of the world. You can absolutely pick this back up and just kind of continue on where you are. You do have to use a little bit of common sense. So if you've had a week off, don't come back and jump the next day, right? Like do a little hack, do a little flat work, then maybe you have a little jump and get back into the program and pick it up at some point there. So then you're back into the routine in 2, 3, 4 days. Obviously, the more time you have off, if it gets too excessive and you're talking like a week and a half or so, you may have to kind of restart things a little bit. But to be fair, I think even at the novice level, if you have a horse who's in fairly moderate work and it misses a week or two, you could probably still get to that event in a month's time, provided everything stays smooth to that point without risking too much for your horse's fitness level.
Great. And I know that was the most commonly asked question ahead of time. So I know that's a concern, and I'm seeing all the questions come in through chat too and tracking those. So I will get to all of them. One quick, now I'm losing my words. Point of clarification. On your hack day, do you expect your horses to be in any sort? I assume you expect them to have a marching walk, but do you expect any sort of frame or bending, or what's kind of the best way to approach a hack?
So in general, I want my horses to be relaxed. I want them to be fairly low and relaxed in their frame. I don't want them on the bit. I want them, if you could imagine, like a round and down, somewhere between like a free walk and round and down, if that makes sense. But it also depends on your horse. Like if I have a horse that's too round and on its head, then I want it really up and out in its walk. Kurt, as some of you guys might know, Kurt, he paces. He's got a terrible pace. And so if I let him just walk on the buckle, he will just pace around the property. So I actually make him go in more of a frame than some of my other horses. So it wants to be a relaxed walk. It absolutely has to march. We are not talking about a trail ride, plodding around, looking on your phone, relaxing. You can put your headphones in, you can listen to music, listen to your favorite podcast, but you have to be marching in that walk. Otherwise, you defeat the whole point of the hack.
Okay, perfect. And then on your days that you're doing interval training and incorporating the canter work, what's the frame you expect the horse to be at the canter while you're up in your jump position?
Well, to be honest, think of the frame that you would want if you were galloping around a cross-country course, right? So every horse is going to be a little bit different, but I want them up. I want them connected. I want to feel like my leg is on, pushing the hind leg up into the bridle. I want them in a nice uphill carriage, shoulder up, wither up, connected so that I feel like if I wanted to, I could stretch tall, sit down, push them together and go ride to a jump. But not sitting down on their back, grinding away on them.
Okay, love it. And final question, I believe came from Pam in the chat. For your trot set days, 20-minute walk, then your trot set, do you finish with a 20-minute walk as well? I know you said that those can be kind of flexible. Maybe you finish with some flat work, but for someone who's like wanting to stick right to the schedule, would it be good to bookend it?
Yes, I absolutely. Look, you can never do too much walking. So, I mean, within reason, but if you're doing a 10-minute trot and you're on your horse for an hour and a half, like kudos to you. That's awesome. As long as your saddle fits and everything else is good. Like, yes. So I would definitely say in general, let's say we're doing that 10-minute trot, right? I would do a 20-minute walk. I do my 10-minute trot. Well, now we're only at 30 minutes. So to me, minimum, you want to be on your horse 45 minutes. So I would at minimum do a 15-minute walk. And if you're a great person, you do a 30-minute walk. Because to me, you would like to be on that horse for an hour. Because while that seems like a really long time for you, your horse only works 1 hour a day.
If you're a good person, you will do the 30-minute walk after.
Yeah, be a good person.
You heard it here first. Okay, I'm going to take this schedule down. I'll share all of these standard templates in the Facebook group. So I apologize, I didn't say that earlier. I'm sure some of you are scrambling to get it down. But of course, I'll share these if you want this as a starting point. And now let's get into the questions. I mentioned at the beginning, and I'm seeing in chat again, wanting some more clarification on what to do if there's a day off. Ashley said, is there kind of a rough formula to follow to try to get the correct restart week? And she didn't mention, she said like if the horse is off for a week or two or more. So you said a week off, you might just be able to start where you were before, which I mean, as a human, I would do that too. If I had a workout program, I wouldn't expect that it all went to hell because I missed a week. But if you're getting to more than a week, can you provide some structure on where to revert to?
Yeah. So let's say, just hypothetically, you get 2 weeks into this program, right? So you've done your 3, we're just going to go with novice here. We're going to have done a 10-minute trot, our 3 2-minute canters or gallops. And then you miss 2 weeks, right? So now you're into week 5. I'm definitely not going to, so let's just say hypothetically, we pick up week 5, even if we've done a couple of days, but we haven't done our gallop. And so that 5th Sunday is going to be our first gallop back. I'm probably not going to do that first gallop 3 3-minute canters because we haven't done that yet, right? So that one would probably go back and do again at like my 2-minute canters. So we did our 3 2-minute canters, just to be clear, because I know we don't have it up. We did our 3 2-minute canters before we missed some time for whatever that reason is. When I pick back up that program, I'm going to do those 3 2-minute canters again. But when I finish that first 2-minute canter, I'm going to check my horse's respirations. And if my horse is exhausted, I'm not going to do 2 more 2-minute canters. I might say I'm going to walk 5 minutes and maybe do 1 more 2-minute canter and then see where I'm at and use a little bit of judgment there. One other thing that I think is important is if you get into a situation where you've missed a couple weeks and you've only got 2 weeks to get to your event and you're truly worried about your horse's fitness level, you can gallop every 5 days. Okay. You have to be careful that you don't overtax your horse and get them tired and backsore and miserable because they can get burnt out too. But you can do your gallops every 5 days. And with the upper level horses, we do gallop every 5 days. To me, that's pretty excessive for a novice level horse. But if I'm on one and I'm like, look, dude, I got 14 days to get to this event and you are a couch potato, I would probably say, let's say hypothetically your horse misses 2 weeks, but you come back on a Friday, right? I'd probably say, okay, I'm going to gallop next Sunday. Actually, to be honest, what I'd probably do is I'd find my event. I'd work out how many gallops could I get in if my last gallop were 5 days before cross country at that first event. And then I would start galloping every 5 days for those last 2 weeks to get my horse ready. Because now instead of having 2 gallops, you might get 3, maybe 4 gallops in that are short gallops, as opposed to having to grind out some big, long, miserable gallop sets. And then you can sort of pick things back up. I know that gets a little bit complicated, but I hope that answers the question where you can be a little creative with this because this is a very generic template.
And you said something that's really important too, which is your last gallop at minimum should be 5 days before the first day of your show.
Yes. Yeah,
so looking at this template, like we have a gallop on our final gallop on Sunday, you would still have 5 more days of work. before the soonest your upcoming show would be. So this is kind of like this is a 7 weeks out template.
Yes, correct. And again, like I've set this up for Sunday as your gallop day. You may be like, okay, that's great, Jon, but we're doing a 1-day event on a Thursday. And so that gives you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's really only 4 off days in there. So you might say that last gallop, because it's a Thursday, I actually want to do that last gallop on Saturday or Friday. That's perfectly acceptable. I think the closest I would want my last gallop for a Thursday 1-day event would be Sunday. I wouldn't want to be any closer than sort of that 4 or 5 day range.
Okay. And then Pam just asked, thinking about a show coming up, like let's say that this extends to week 7 with the show in that 7th week. Do you continue with that same like highest amount of fitness that you had in week 6? So you're still doing, in the example of novice, you're still doing your 15-minute trot set. You're probably not jumping, but are you kind of following what that 6th week would look like?
For the week of an event?
Yes.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand the question here, because I was
Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, but her question here, I'll show it on the screen. After the 6-week schedule, do you just continue with the highest amount of fitness?
Okay, so like going forward from event to event. Yeah, I think realistically, if you're talking about doing just novice, not just, but if you're talking about doing a season of novice, I think a 15-minute trot and 3 3-minute canters should keep your horse in pretty good physical shape. Now, the one thing that I was told years ago by Jimmy Wofford was a competition counts as 2 gallops. So you don't have to feel like after you do an event, certainly at the novice level, that the next week you have to go grind out that big gallop set again. If you've only got 1 weekend between the competition, so you have an event, a weekend off, and then an event, you're going to want a gallop in there. But if at the novice level, you've got 2 off weekends, I wouldn't be opposed to saying like, look, my horse was great. I'm going to do my trot sets. On my gallop day, I'm going to just do another trot set. And then the following week, I'm going to do my gallop again, assuming your horse felt fit and strong and great. If your horse was kind of tired and exhausted, then I would get that next gallop in and you could talk about, gosh, do I need to do a little bit more? I will say, if you're doing this plan of a 15-minute trot and 3 3-minute canters or a cross-country school religiously, right, and you're following this program through your season and your horse is exhausted, the first thing I would do would get the vet out to come do some blood work on the horse and make sure that I'm not missing something, because that should suffice to get a novice horse to be fit and strong and ready to go.
Okay, and then we have a clarification question here. Your final gallop, is that happening at least 5 days before the show or before cross country day?
Before cross country. So I've got on Thursday Pretzel going out for his first novice event. So Pretzel did cross country. Would he do cross country? Well, because I went to an event. So on a normal week, he would have done cross country probably Friday of last week. I happened to be at Chattahoochee, so we did it Wednesday, and then he kind of played around through the weekend. But in an ideal week, he would have done cross country on Friday. He would have had Saturday or Sunday off, and then would have one more jump school, which he did yesterday, which was Monday. And then he's going to flat. Well, he flatted today. He's going to flat tomorrow, and then we go to the event. So ideally, you don't want it to be closer than 5 days before your cross-country day.
Great.
I will say, if I'm going to a really important event and I'm doing my last gallop, I try to do it on, assuming we have a Saturday cross-country day, like at a long, which I'm using as a hypothetical because we're going to say this is like the novice area championships, right? I would do my last gallop on Friday of the week before. So I would actually have 8 days, right? Because I get paranoid, but I'm like, you know what? At this point, we're probably fit. I want to make sure that if you have an overreach or you pull a shoe or you step on a rock, that I have a little bit of time to work things out. But again, if you miss a big chunk of time, you may not have that luxury. You may have to, if you have a Saturday cross country, you may need to do your last gallop on Monday.
That was really helpful. Great question, Robin. I also have a question from Heidi. I think it was Heidi. No, Heidi had a different question. So a Facebook user said, what if you only have 4 days per week to ride? How would you adjust the schedule?
Okay, so if you have 4 days a week to ride, I think the thing is then you have to get in your canter day. That has to happen. You have to get in a jump day. That has to happen. And then you probably need to incorporate dressage into your other 2 days. So one of those days can be just a normal dressage day, and the other day could be like do some dressage, go out for a trot around the field. If you only have a ring, I'm going to be totally frank and honest with you guys here, then just do another day of dressage. The trot isn't that important at this level. But realize that is a lot of work in a ring for a horse. And so if you can do something on one of those if you can do something on one of those dressage days to incorporate a little bit of trot in the field, to go out for a hack, to do something different, to get them out of the ring, go walk down the road, go walk around your stable's parking lot, go for a trail ride, whatever it is. In Wisconsin, we would have trailered to the Kettle Moraine. Like anything you can do to get your horse out of the ring is going to be super, super helpful to make sure that they stay happy and ready to go. But 4 days a week, you can do it. It is tough. Like it's not ideal, but you can absolutely do it. One thing that you might be able to do is, could you convince a kid at the stable to take your horse for a trail ride one day? So now your horse is working 5 days a week, even if you can only do 4. So you can at least get that hack day in and keep things fresh and fun for your horse.
I love that. I volunteer to trail ride any horses near Denver. That was Stephanie's question. I apologize, Stephanie, for not crediting you right off the bat. And I did find Heidi's question. She has 2 thoroughbreds. So she said, if you have a horse that's naturally or already pretty cardiovascularly fit at the starter to novice level, are the walk, trot, and canter days important for soft tissue conditioning?
Yes. 100%. You want to go out, you want to ride in different footing. I think this is one thing that's super important. Is one of the reasons we don't like to always be in prepared surfaces is because that tends to be in a ring and it gets really boring for the horses. But the other reason is that you want to train on different footing. So changes in footing are really hard on horses. But what that means is like galloping across a field and then into a ring full speed, and then out of that ring and onto a driveway or onto a hard packed road and then back into the field. Like that is hard on horses because it is sudden changes. But you want to have your horse working in the ring. You want to have your horse working in the field. You want to have your horse working in mud. You want to have your horse working in all different kinds of going, so that all of its connective tissues and its soft tissue gets used to stretching and bending and flexing and using itself in a responsible way. Don't be an idiot and run 600 meters a minute through a bog. But absolutely, it's important for those thoroughbred horses, even though they're fit and they may not get a ton out of a 2-3 minute canter set, they're going to get some discipline as to how to canter and what's expected of them. You're going to get comfortable in being able to lengthen and shorten them, but also, absolutely great question, their soft tissue is going to strengthen from going out there and having to canter around that field.
Awesome. Yeah, that is a great question. All right. I'll ask one that just came in. Would you change the schedule at all for a horse that's doing beginner novice eventing and also showing 3rd and 4th level dressage? Which I love this question because conditioning is obviously not just for event horses. We called this starter through novice level, but I do want people who are doing dressage or hunters or jumpers to kind of, have something that they can work off of too.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a little bit tricky. I mean, I guess the thing would be you want to make sure that you're doing work that's going to keep you competitive in the dressage. So you could take that hack day and make it into a dressage day. You maybe I think one of the things is I often think of eventers as CrossFitters and dressage horses as weightlifters. So it is trying to train some different muscles there. So if we're talking like third or fourth level dressage, we're not talking Grand Prix, but it's competitive enough that you want to make sure you're doing the work that you need to do for that sport as well. So absolutely, you could swap out either your trot day or your hack day for an extra dressage day. I think if you're talking about eventing at the novice level, that trot day is pretty important, at least when you're getting up to like the 15-minute trots. So I would like you to keep that. So as long as you can keep it fresh for your horse and you can do enough hacking that they're not going to get sour doing 3 days of dressage, which, to be fair, if you're doing a good job, your horse shouldn't get sour doing dressage. Your horse should love it. Where they get sour is when we get intense. And I've been guilty of this, so I'm not pointing fingers, where we get intense and we start grinding away on them because we're like, oh my God, the event's coming, and you won't put your flipping head down and you start getting upset with them. But if you're doing good work, it's fun. So they should enjoy it.
Great. I want to ask a question that Lee asked that ahead of time that I think has been touched on, but I just want to make sure that she gets the answer. And I think it's probably a relatable question. So she's asking if she misses a day for whatever reason, should she make up that day, skip it and continue on to the next day, redo the entire week? So what I heard you say, like for the person who asked if we just have 4 days to ride per week, that your most important days at these levels are your canter day, your jump day, your dressage day, and your trot day. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably in that order. Okay. I would say, so if I miss a day, you're not going to just pick back up where you left off necessarily, because like, let's say we missed a day and the next day was supposed to be a jump day. Unless there's a really important reason, like I got to sell a horse for loads of money and I'm going to be greedy. Just kidding. I don't jump after a day off. I don't like to do that. To me, they should do a flat day first and then have a jump day. So I'm going to be a little bit leery about that. I don't love, but I will do it if need be, to gallop after a jump day either. I think that's just a lot of pounding on them. So I like to have basically a day of trot or flat work before I jump, and I like to have a day of flat work before I gallop. I don't love to do a big trot set and then a gallop the next day. That just seems a little bit redundant to me. Because like, if I go to the gym and I'm sore, I don't work out great the next day. If I go right back to the gym, I have to do some different stuff. I might go to the gym, but I'm going to work on different things, right? I'm not going to do leg days 2 days in a row. So going out on a trot and then a gallop the next day doesn't make sense to me. Same with the jumping. Going jumping and then galloping doesn't make sense to me. So I like to have variation in the training. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I don't know if Lee is watching or not, but if anybody has follow-ups on that question, please let us know. We have a couple of questions about hills.
Yes.
Kirsten said that she has the gift of many hills around her, and she took her thoroughbred out today and the hills were a bit much for her. Is it okay to shorten the hack if there are tons of hills, since that is harder on their muscles and soft tissues?
Yep, absolutely it is. So again, you're probably still on your horse the same length of time. But for example, when I first went to my very first 5-star, we did it right here on my farm, and we don't have hills. So we did 3 8-minute canters. We were trotting 40 minutes. It was a lot, and it wasn't ideal. It was a lot on the horses. And we would do, on our trot day, we would do a 40 to 45-minute trot. In that, we would also do sprints. And then on our gallop day, we would do a 20-minute trot and 3 8-minute canters. It was brutal. And honestly, I think back on it and I'm like, good Lord, like, how did I keep those horses in one piece? And I think honestly, it was the gift of really well put together horses. Now, when we're getting horses ready for a 5-star here in Florida, we have access to some different places that have some hills. So the most recent place that I went to get a horse 5-star fit, we were able, because of the hill, we would do a 15-minute trot. I'm just thinking back here because it was last season. We're just getting rolling right now to get into that. We did a 15-minute trot, and we would do 4 times up this hill. The hill took us about 3 minutes to get up. If we were at a good clip, maybe 3.5 if we were going slow. But when we get to the top, the horse would be breathing quite hard. So we knew we got a good pull on the horse. And, I used my 35 years worth of, God, that's terrible, 35 years worth of experience to know, like, okay, that was good for this horse. Now, when you first start using a hill for the very first time, that can be a little bit intimidating, and you have to ask lots of questions if other people have used them to know, like, really? I did 8s last time. You think 3.5, 4 times is going to do it? But it did it because of that hill.
Yeah, that's amazing. The other hill question we had came in ahead of time, and I feel like I'm in command center. I have so many screens going.
You're doing great.
Kristen said, I tend to walk every hill that I can find, even if it's short. Am I actually adding anything by doing this?
Yeah, I think you absolutely are. Like, you're adding lots of things. So I think anytime that I find a hill, I walk it too. Like, I was at Chattahoochee Hills this weekend. I took all the horses out for a hack the day we got there, and I just went and found all the hills I could to walk up and down because we don't have hills like that here in Florida. And so I took advantage of it. And I think it's super for them. It absolutely adds to their fitness level, even just at walk. And like, I was sitting there thinking, gosh, I should just stay here for the week so I could gallop here. But because I was competing the next day, obviously it didn't make sense to go galloping up the hills. So I walked them, and absolutely that helps.
Amazing. And the last question I'm seeing here is from Ashley. And it's a great one, especially I think a lot of people are dealing with footing that this time of year you have to make a call. And she said, is there a point of walking in the mud being too muddy? I have thick mud that's not clay based that the horses, sinks over the horse's coronet bands in some sections and over the fetlock in others. Mud is almost a year-round issue where I am. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So yes, there absolutely is a level where it gets to be too much. So if you can think about it this way, if your horse is stepping in it and it is like suctioning your horse's foot so it can't get it out of the ground, I think then you're talking about risking soft tissue injuries where your horse is going to be just yanking and pulling and you're going to strain something for sure. It's sort of, again, growing up in Wisconsin, I worked for a really great farrier named Red Wrenchin. And the guy that I actually worked with and under said to me something that kind of stuck with me to this point, that mud has never sucked a shoe off a horse in the history of shoeing horses. What happens is your horse can't get its foot out of the way, its front foot out of the way, and so then it steps on its front foot with its hind foot, and that's how it pulls its shoe off. So if you can imagine, your horse is just trying to pull that front foot out of the way, and before it can, that hind foot overreaches and steps into it. That's a lot of pressure, a lot of strength that mud is putting onto your horse's leg. If it can't get it out in time for its own hind leg to get out of there, I think then you're talking about that's probably a bit excessive to be like intentionally walking through. We were at Chattahoochee Hills this weekend. It was so wet, so wet and really muddy, but it didn't suction the horses. And so even with all the mud that they had, you still could successfully gallop through it. And it was very good for the horses because, they had to deal with that mud and stepping in and having to pull their legs out. And it was a little bit muddy, but it wasn't heavy. You don't want heavy, sticky clay mud. That gets to be a bit too much.
Okay, that's super helpful. This is incredible. I'm looking at the clock right now. We're at 59 and a half minutes. We've gotten through all of the questions and we slotted an hour. So I think that this is, Jon, job well done. Thank you again for all the preparation that you put in to make sure that this was useful and truly a workshop that people could walk away with what their plan of action is. If anybody's listening and you're a training level rider or a prelim level rider and you would like similar guidance, please let us know and we'll host another one of these. John and I already talked about this, and he's like, I'm not signing up for it. And I was like, well, you're the one I'm going to ask. So we'll see if we do a training in prelim level 1. But like I said, I'll put these templates in the group and we can continue the conversation there. John, you're wonderful and we appreciate you so much. Thanks for spending another hour teaching us.
Well, right back at you, Jess. I appreciate you and all of you ride IQers. Thanks for all the great questions. Honestly, I just hope this gives you guys a general idea, a general template, and realize that you've got to be flexible. You have to be able to work this into your life and work this into your horse's life, and know that it's not the Bible. It's not set in stone. You can be flexible in all of this stuff.
Yes, you're doing great. And we'll be cheering for you at all of your upcoming shows, all of you Ride IQ members, and of course you, John, as well. And have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thanks, guys.